This is the first in a set of videos about the scientific revolution and enlightenment. We want to see the major changes in thinking that occurred during this time and how they impact other parts of society. So in trying to sort of define the scientific revolution, basically what you're looking at is a shift in the way of thinking about the world and think about knowledge between the 1500s and the 1700s. There's a lot of innovation during this time, but really what I want to underscore is sort of the shift in the way people saw the world. In the 15th century, you still have a lot of what we may think of as medieval views in Europe about the way the world works and the way we understand things. One thing I want to underscore right away is that I think there's often a perception that, people before the modern era were just, not intelligent. They just accepted the way things were from whoever told them that. But there was lots of thinking. We saw the Renaissance, of course. Further back, you have the 11th century Renaissance in Europe. You have things that we think of as scientific thinking, but this is really still a shift in the way that people thought about science and knowledge. But it's not to say that people before this didn't have any knowledge, right? Okay. So in the Middle Ages, there's this perception that the world was really unchanging, that the way the world was now was really how it had always been. Some of this is partly religious views. Some of it was, people just didn't see things seem to change a whole lot. There's also this perception of a geocentric universe, a universe where the Earth is in the middle and everything goes around it. We'll talk more about that in the next video. But important to keep in mind that the idea here is that humanity and humans and the Earth is really at the center of everything, both physically and metaphysically, like philosophy-wise. And you have a reliance on classical thinkers. If people want to see if something's true, they think back, okay, did Aristotle say it? Did Ptolemy, the ancient Hellenistic astronomer, say it? There's a heavy reliance on these thinkers by the time we hit like the 1300s when their writings were rediscovered. It's not to say people weren't critical of those things or people didn't use their own senses to look at things. You saw some of that thinking. But still, the basic cornerstone of scientific research and knowledge is going back to check classical writers. So why do we see a change? Keep in mind, 1500s, we're coming at the tail end of the Renaissance. The Renaissance was a time of critical thinking, of analyzing classical texts, and being more critical of them. And so you have a chance to sort of rethink things. This also overlaps the age of exploration. So there's a need for new scientific instruments. One of the things we see with the scientific revolution is the invention of things like the telescope and new methods of navigation and measuring things, and all that requires more precise measurements. One of the biggest reasons you have, arguably, the scientific revolution is you had better technology to measure the kinds of things that we think about with it. If you're trying to figure out, does the Earth really go around the sun, you need to have really good measurements of movement of the stars and planets and other things like that, and that requires more precise instruments. And also, people, if you think the world is static and doesn't change, but then you go off and discover, hey, there's some new continents out here that we're going to call the Americas, and there's new animals and people that we've never seen before, there's more of a possibility out there, like, hey, what's out there that we haven't seen that we might discover? So sort of an interest in discovery and exploration. We'll see some of the specifics of those changes in the next video.